It's one of the poorest countries in the world, facing some of the biggest challenges. But Sierra Leone's about to get a new president. So how will he tackle everything from the Ebola crisis to the economy? This is Inside Story. I'm Hashem Ahelbarra. Hello and welcome to the program. The votes are being counted in Sierra Leone in a poll delayed by electoral fraud allegations. A presidential runoff between two men to succeed President Ernest Bai Koroma, who's stepping down after 10 years. The task for whoever wins, a nation's recovery from years of struggle. Sierra Leone already had one of the world's highest infant mortality rates. Then came an outbreak of the Ebola disease. The health system couldn't cope. On top of that, a slump in commodity prices crippled the economy. We'll talk to our guests in a moment, but first, Ahmed Idris reports from Freetown.
APC, SLPP.
As election officers count the votes, Sierra Leoneans hold their breath. This is the last leg of a difficult 3 months. Officials are hoping that the turnout will be high to give legitimacy to the process. When President Ernest Bai Koroma arrived to choose his successor, there was hardly anyone queuing to vote. Those who did left long before. The low turnout was not lost on the president.
My only concern at the runoff is the voter turnout that seemed to be a bit lower than what we experienced on the 7th. And we do hope that with all the gains we have made, it is incumbent on the candidates to accept the outcome of the elections.
This is what some say is partly responsible for some voters staying away, especially in more rural areas. Heavily armed soldiers at polling stations.
We have high presence of security outfits. There's been a number of issues, intimidation, threats and all of that. And citizens they're not so enthusiastic in terms of how the process is going.
Julius Kamara lives close to where the president voted, but he's not keen on voting.
Well, as a youth, as my age, no, I'm more than 35 now. No, I can say I'm not even a youth anymore, no. But I can't boast of anything, no, I learn skill, there's not enough job.
And there are thousands who think that way. The race has narrowed to 2 candidates after the first round failed to produce a clear winner.
Voters must choose between a former military ruler and a former government minister. They both represent parties that have dominated politics in Sierra Leone. Voters who turned up are mostly young and are eager to change the way things are done here.
For those who chose to participate, like this first-time voter, they simply want their voices heard.
I want a change in the educational system because lately it's been very poor and we need an improvement.
Election officials say results could be out in a few days. But whoever succeeds this man will have to find a way to unite Sierra Leoneans polarized by the election, as well as addressing the critical needs of the people. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Freetown.
Let's bring in our panel. From Freetown, Cornelius DEVEAUX, Sierra Leone's Deputy Minister of Information. In Birmingham, in the UK, Laura Martin, lecturer at the University of Birmingham. And joining us via Skype from Yaoundé, Cameroon, Mary Roger Bilowa, editor at Africa International. Welcome to you all. I would like to start by asking Mr. DEVEAUX this. The first round was a tight race. Is the second round and the final one likely to be a replay of the first scenario?
Well, certainly this second round is going to be also a tight race because we see the two presidential candidates, they have their various advantages. But however, considering the total number of registered voters per region, it is very much likely that Dr. Samura Kamara who is the candidate of the All People's Congress, will emerge successful.
Laura, is this your feeling that Samura Kamara is likely to win the election, or his opponent, Julius Maada Bio?
I think that Julius Maada Bio has a very good chance of winning. I think it really will depend on this voter turnout, as you were discussing earlier. I think it will depend on where the voters turned out. But I think Julius Maada Bio has a very good chance of winning.
Marie, I mean, it's an election which is sort of marked by voter turnout which is low compared to previous elections. Is this something which is going to have an impact on the future of the democratic process in Sierra Leone?
This is a very special election because it has not been easy. There was discussion and I would say contestation. They didn't, as you know, and what we see is very difficult to say. From my point of view, it's very difficult. I could say just that the background is that you feel that what they call the international community is sort of, especially, I would say, the business world, is sort of supporting the outgoing regime. So because they feel they have sort of relaunched economy after war, and that the prospects are very hopeful. So whatever you've been reading and hearing around, and even I would see in the economic community, they are more sympathetic with the candidate from the ruling party.
So let's talk about the two main candidates. Let's start with Kamara. Mr. DEVEAUX, why would the people of Sierra Leone pick Kamara as the next president of the country?
Well, Dr. Samura Matthew Wilson Kamara is not in any way connected with the ugly history of this country, which brought about an 11-year-old rebel war. And also, he is a statesman who has served several governments, but throughout his tenure, he has never been handpicked or accused of having been involved in any corruption. Apart from that, he has international recognition.
That could not be the case, by the way, because he has been accused also of corruption, and he's been widely described by his opponent as Mr. 10%.
Well, these are allegations for political point. Nobody has ever brought up any tangible incriminating evidence to justify their accusation of Dr. Samura Kamara as being corrupt, or, as they say, Mr. 10%. Because if you want to say he is corrupt, then you provide the evidence. In the absence of any evidence to substantiate their claims of him being Mr. 10%, Sierra Leoneans have certainly come to the conclusion that Dr. Samura Matthew Wilson Kamara is as clean as a white handkerchief, and he is not just that clean. He is experienced. He has passion for young people. He has passion for the older people. He is committed. He is dedicated. And he is the most suitable of the two on which Sierra Leoneans will hand over the destiny of this country to
the
ballot box.
Laura, we're talking about Samura Kamara, who has been a trained economist, who presents himself as the candidate of the continuity of the political establishment, and that he would like to move ahead. Are his credentials likely to push voters to decide who is likely to become the next president of the country?
Quite possibly. I mean, people do look at his experience. He has been in government for 20 years, and he actually has worked for the opposing party as well at certain points. His credentials certainly do mean something. He is very well known in Sierra Leone for being a technocrat and having a lot of experience. But his association with the APC shouldn't go unnoticed either. he has a very clear association and was, many would say, handpicked by the current president. And so, and to be honest, from my experience over the last couple of weeks, I was in Sierra Leone, and a lot of people are very disillusioned with the way that the government has gone the last 10 years. So I don't know. I'm not entirely confident that his credentials will necessarily be enough, because at the end of the day, he's still associated with the APC.
Marie, this is someone who has been widely described as a candidate who stays away from taking a tough stance when it comes to major challenges the country faces. Is this something which is going to help him or undermine his chances to become a president?
You know, I wonder what is stronger with the Sierra Leoneans. The fear to get back into the past with the opposition candidate being linked to two coups, being involved in two putsch, and he has also lost before the previous attempt against Bai Koroma. He lost elections. So it's like maybe people won't expect so much. They won't expect miracles, but maybe they prefer to have sort of the devil we know, which is the ruling party, rather than maybe attempting again to go a certain path which is more problematic. It's something we wonder, and that's what is at stake here. Because I don't think that Mr. Kamara will be a providential man. I don't think so. There's not. Otherwise, we know by now. I think he has some challenges on his own, but we feel that the people in Sierra Leone maybe would like to build on something which has started sort of a recovery after war.
I see.
And not change path right now. That's the feeling.
Mr. DEVEAUX, running against Kamara is the bravado army officer, former co-leader Julius Maada Bio. A remarkable political career, widely seen by many as the right man to lead the country for the future. What do you think?
Well, he is certainly the right man. And that was noticed by the members of the All People's Congress Party, the party to which he belongs. And that was why at the party's National Delegates Conference, after going through several consultations involving senior stakeholders of the party, it was resolved at the party's National Delegates Conference that out of 28 people who had aspired to be the presidential candidate, Dr. Samura Kamara was the most suitable. And this lays to rest the claim that he was handpicked by Dr. Ernest Bai Koroma, the current president, who is also the national chairman and leader of our party. President Koroma had to follow the dictates of the 1995 5th December APC Constitution, and it was on the provisions of that Constitution that Dr. Samura Kamara was appointed to be the presidential candidate. And we in the APC, we believe he has the capacity, we believe he is fully charged, we believe his experience surpasses that of Mr. Julius Maada Bio. We believe he has a very clean record. We believe his hands are not soiled with the blood of people who were killed. Yes, his hands are not soiled with the blood.
The credentials you're talking about, the track record of Mr. Kamara, didn't help him at all in the first round.
No, of course they did. Don't forget that the first round was marred by several irregularities, and these irregularities, you know, were brought to the light by other opposition parties, including the main SLPP and even my party, together with civil society organizations, and even ordinary citizens who used social media to bring out malpractices that were being unearthed in their respective communities.
Okay.
So the first round result is something that we should not take for granted, especially when you consider that the results were aggregated and released by the Electoral Commission on a 25% basis of total polling stations instead of total number of votes cast for the respective candidates in each polling station.
Okay. Laura, I would like to move now to Laura. Maada Bio looks like a real political phenomenon in Sierra Leone. How do you explain his growing appeal among the people who see him as the right choice for the country?
Well, I think it's not just about Maada Bio. I think it's also about what the SLPP stands for. I think that, you know, the SLPP has done a big campaign towards free education. They're very big on cleaning up corruption. They have plans to help the economy get back on its feet. I mean, I think it's not just about him as an individual. I think it's about it's also about the memory of Kaba, who was the president from 96 to 2007. And people have this memory of a better life back then, and what life was like when free education was available, and their kids were not struggling to go to school. And so, you know, I think he is symbolic of this. He is a sort of lifelong politician. He has been around. He certainly doesn't have an entirely clean record by any stretch. But I think people are just looking for something new. I think they're looking for a change.
Marie, this is someone who has been involved in the 1992 military coup where his troops killed 20 people. He apologized for that. He was also involved in the 1996 coup. Has his image been rehabilitated among the Sierra Leoneans? Do they forget about the past?
Well, I don't think they forget at all. But, you know, politics in Africa is very much based and determined by along the ethnic lines. And this is not absent of from this election. The ethnic parameter is also there. But what we see is that if people had really forgotten that, his appeal would be stronger, because incumbent president have always a hard time. And what we see here is very difficult to decide. You know, they had almost the same amount of votes in the first round, almost the same round, and that was spectacular. But if I may give one of the opinion, what I consider a very sort of a leading opinion in some ECOWAS countries, is that they don't like leaders who've been involved in coups. It's been not only once in coups, but twice. That's two times in a coup. And also because now people are really desperately trying to turn the page of that area and really engage into democracy. And the second point is that President Bai Koroma had engaged in a very constructive cooperation with his colleagues from the ECOWAS. And this is an asset while Africa tries to build communities and develop free trade areas and achieve development through unity. And there is sort of a mistrust towards a former putschist.
All right. So now let's move forward to what happens next. I mean, let's talk about the challenges that the next president of Sierra Leone will have to deal with. Mr. DEVEAUX, what do you think is the top priority for the next president? Is it going to be rebuilding the healthcare system that has been destroyed during the Ebola crisis, or do you think economy is the #1 priority? Mr. DeVeaux.
Well, we have our manifesto, which is governing for the grassroots. And in that manifesto, we intend to expand healthcare services, to improve and expand healthcare services across the country. We intend to expand the free healthcare scheme, which for now includes persons with disability, survivors of Ebola, and also children under 5 years, together with pregnant women and lactating mothers. We have recently introduced the Sierra Leone Health Insurance Scheme, which caters for the family member of every worker in this country. We are also going to pursue very rigorously our efforts in diversifying the economy. We realize that reliance on a particular commodity could cause a serious setback to the economy, having experienced the fall in commodity prices and the way it's affected our economy. We are pushing towards diversification. We are expanding agricultural projects to ensure that we are able not just to grow what we eat,
that's easy said,
but to be able to
then
transform
implemented.
Our agricultural sector.
I see your point. Let me just include Laura. Laura, when you...
Hello?
Yeah. I would just like to include Laura in this discussion. The next president will come against the backdrop of a country that has been destroyed by the Ebola epidemic, growing rates of HIV, malaria, destroyed healthcare systems, shortage of health professionals. How can he put the country back on track when the revenues have been in decline over the last few years?
Well, that's a very good question. But I mean, I do think the economy is key to this, and I think you can't really have an improved healthcare system without an improved economy. You know, people I spoke to in the last couple of weeks, one of the key things that they pointed to when they were discussing who they were going to vote for was rising food prices. And how much the cost of living has gone up, rent, school fees, all these sorts of things. And so I think these are at the forefront of the things that people are worried about and did ultimately influence their vote. So I think promises of a better economy and how you do that is going to be absolutely critical for the next president.
Marie, this is going to be my last question. Please, in less than 1 minute. This is the 5th post-war election in Sierra Leone, and many say just on its own is a sign that democracy is on track in the country, a good sign.
Yes, definitely. Oh, definitely. I mean, we have been following Sierra Leone and being mentioned sometimes as an example of a process which is underway. Through although the difficulties are huge. We spoke about Ebola, we spoke about all the challenges you can face, and you had already 2 times elections, changing presidents, and the first one was very well. The second one had a little bit of problems, but basically the process is doing well. And if we compare with many other countries around, on that particular issue, Sierra Leone is doing pretty well. So this is a good basis to relaunch, to get back on track.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your insights. Cornelius DeVeaux, Laura Martin, and Marie Roger Beloa. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashem, Ahelbarra, and the whole team here. Bye for now.